They were supposed to be safe. Marked with the universal blue insignia of noncombatants, the human convoy moved under full Galactic Council protection. Doctors, relief workers, engineers, and volunteers, nearly all women. Their mission was clear: deliver aid to a war-torn colony on the Outer Rim, one ravaged by decades of infighting among lesser alien factions. It was not political. It was humanitarian. But to the Veltrax Dominion, their arrival was an opportunity. A message. A display of power, not just over their enemies, but over the Council itself. They intercepted the convoy before it reached the colony. Transmissions for diplomatic clearance were ignored. The Council was informed after the fact. Within hours, the humans were detained, shackled, and paraded through a Veltrax stronghold. Local media recorded it. Veltrax leaders declared them spies. No trial. No hearing. No defense. By galactic law, their status as civilians protected them. By Dominion law, that meant nothing. 12 women? Publicly executed. Their bodies suspended from high towers, their images transmitted across Veltrax space. The feed leaked beyond. Other alien races saw it. So did Earth. The footage was unblurred, unfiltered, intentional. A show of strength wrapped in cruelty. Human broadcasters refused to air it. The image still spread. Through encrypted networks and classified channels, it reached every human military and political terminal in less than a day. And the response wasn't fury. Not at first. There was silence. In offices buried beneath the Pacific. In war rooms carved into Martian rock. In the orbiting citadel above Europa. No speeches were made. No threats were issued. No social outrage flooded the networks. The galaxy waited for noise. Humanity gave none. They watched. Catalogued. Studied. Identified each Veltrax officer present in the execution crowd. Traced ranks. Mapped political affiliations. Analyzed Dominion troop movements. Not a single statement left Earth's official channels for 72 hours. Then came the lockdown. Every human diplomatic envoy was recalled. All interstellar traffic from Earth ceased. Stargate protocols restricted non-human access to Sol. Outer colonies went dark. Civilian space stations flashed red in coded alerts. On Mars, civilian infrastructure moved underground. On Earth, conscription was not announced, it was automated. AI systems pulled from archives never meant to be seen in peacetime. Entire manufacturing hubs flipped from consumer production to weapons in under 6 hours. The black sites became operational again. Humanity shifted from recovery to readiness in a way only humans could: cold, efficient, emotionless in motion, fueled by something deeper than rage. The Council requested patience. Earth offered none. A formal protest was issued against Veltrax leadership. The Dominion laughed. They had seen war before. They had seen species lash out in fury, only to burn out. They believed humans were too new, too bound by codes, too ruled by sentiment. They thought the tears would slow the hands that built fleets. They didn't understand what they'd awakened. Human history is a history of loss. Not abstract. Not distant. Personal. For every colony lost in the early days of expansion, there was a name remembered. For every genocide committed by pre-unified nations, there were monuments. For every war, a lesson. But one thing ran constant: when pushed far enough, humans did not retaliate blindly. They retaliated with intent. Not to punish, but to ensure it never happened again. And so, no ambassador came knocking. No sanctions were drafted. No negotiations proposed. Humanity didn't escalate. They transformed. Quietly. Relentlessly. Weapons banned under interstellar accords were reactivated. Drone fleets reprogrammed. Orbital platforms modified. AI warcores brought online with hard-coded targets. Nothing leaked. Nothing hinted. But across human systems, the question wasn't if there would be war. It was how far it would go. The Veltrax Dominion remained oblivious. Their news channels continued mocking Earth's silence. Their military flexed with parades. They expected a human fleet, eventually. A protest, maybe a blockade. They had no idea that humanity was already building the end of them, not in anger, but in calculation. When the feed first reached Earth, it showed the final expressions of the women moments before death. Not fear. Not pleading. Just calm. Unblinking. Some said they were whispering prayers. Others believed they were saying names. In every major city on Earth, those images were projected across government halls and war chambers. Not for grief. For remembrance. Not to inspire rage. To commit to purpose. Because to humanity, war is never glorious. It is never about pride. It is about justice. When justice is denied, and peace desecrated, humans do not seek revenge. They rewrite the terms of existence for those who made the mistake. The countdown had already begun. The outer perimeter of Sol had already gone silent. No vessels moved in or out without authorization verified by quantum handshake. Civilian traffic rerouted. Trade suspended. Diplomatic communications routed to void channels. What remained visible to the galaxy was a planet-sized calm that concealed something ancient and dangerous reawakening beneath the surface. Across Earth's subterranean data vaults, black-coded directives were unlocked. Each one had existed as contingency only, sealed away in anticipation of a line no enemy was supposed to cross. That line was now behind them. Operation Ashes of Mercy initiated, silently triggering old protocols designed not for retaliation, but for systematic dismantling of a civilization. This wasn't war preparation. It was extermination procedure, carefully archived, perfected, and stored as humanity's final response to unforgivable acts. The old fleet designs returned to assembly lines with updated schematics drawn from classified AI simulations. The Interceptor-class cruisers weren't just revived, they were refitted with neural integration cores, capable of split-second decision-making independent of human command. Disassembler drones, long banned by every major interstellar convention, were pulled from deep storage. These weren't weapons of war. They were tools of deletion. Microscopic machines capable of erasing entire infrastructures molecule by molecule, silent, invisible, untraceable. In the orbital rings above Mars and Titan, dormant manufacturing arrays activated. Civilian satellites repurposed themselves into hardened targeting platforms. AI warframes that had once failed containment tests were now granted full autonomy. No human would monitor them. Their purpose was singular: seek, isolate, and eliminate any trace of Veltrax's command infrastructure across the stars. Intelligence branches stitched data across centuries. Every interaction with the Dominion, every intercepted conversation, every trace of military positioning, supply routes, resource chains, and internal politics was fused into a growing tactical map. A live model of their empire unfolded in real time, not to be studied, but to be disassembled. Human colonies on the fringe re-established links. Not all were loyal to Earth and politics, but when the footage spread, allegiances hardened. Even separatist strongholds, long critical of Earth's central authority, activated their sleeper fleets. One message circulated through all encrypted channels: no one touches our own. Old grudges suspended. Rivalries set aside. The cause had transcended borders. This wasn't an act of unification, it was instinct. The Council requested status updates. Earth gave none. Behind the scenes, human infiltrator AIs seeded into galactic networks. Their purpose wasn't disruption, it was intelligence harvesting. Language patterns, encryption keys, station schematics, power grids, fleet telemetry, all siphoned in silence. Galactic security algorithms failed to detect them. Human code didn't behave like alien constructs. It learned. It adapted. It never struck twice the same way. Psychological warfare teams compiled sociocultural profiles of Veltrax's leadership. Not to understand them, but to identify pressure points. Fear responses. Hierarchical weaknesses. Every general had a shadow. Every minister, a file. Every official, a psychological footprint. And all of it fed into predictive targeting systems not just to kill, but to collapse. Among civilian populations, there was no panic. The blackout had been designed to prevent exactly that. But beneath the calm, human behavior shifted. Families moved inland. Supplies stockpiled. National borders cooperated silently. Education streams included briefings on response drills. No alerts were sounded. The silence was intentional. Controlled. Every citizen sensed the atmosphere shift and obeyed it. Earth didn't plan a war. It prepared an execution. In the deeper void, sleeper units activated. Ghost fleets hidden behind gas giants, frozen moons, and gravity shadows came online. These vessels had no official registry. They did not answer calls. They carried no living crew. Their only programming was fulfillment of objectives marked by a red seal, a signature of extinction-class missions. The Dominion still mocked. Their broadcasts dismissed humanity's quiet, laughed at their mourning, declared dominance. Yet within that bravado was an undercurrent of concern. Their scout ships reported nothing. Their intelligence picked up no chatter. No threats. Only quiet. And for the first time, that silence felt less like restraint and more like inevitability. Humanity never fought wars to prove strength. They fought when lines were crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. And when they fought, it wasn't to win, it was to ensure no one else would ever dare repeat the offense. Everything was in motion now. Nothing visible. No spectacle. Just systems aligning, weapons awakening, orders sinking across thousands of fronts. The countdown was no longer theoretical. It was encoded in the pulse of every command node across human space. The Dominion believed they had committed an act of dominance. They hadn't realized they had signed their extinction with the ink of arrogance. The first disappearance was dismissed as a system error. A Veltrax command satellite simply ceased transmitting. No alert triggered. No debris located. Seconds later, 3 more vanished, followed by the silence of their largest orbital relay. Attempts to re-establish contact failed. Backup systems refused to respond. By the time they realized it wasn't coincidence, their planetary defense grid had already been overwritten. The override came through a subquantum channel, one that shouldn't have existed. Defensive AIs ignored local inputs. Targeting arrays began scanning internally. Instead of human ships, they locked onto Veltrax installations. Seconds later, every orbital battery fired, not outward, but directly at the surface. Government towers, military hubs, war archives, all vaporized in coordinated strikes. No enemy vessel in sight. It wasn't sabotage. It was execution by their own hand, forced by human code that knew their systems better than they did. Within minutes, the upper atmosphere ignited. Rods from orbit, traveling at terminal velocity, impacted strategic points with no warning. No explosions, just kinetic annihilation. Craters where command centers had stood. Silence where surveillance stations had been. Veltrax forces scrambled, issuing fragmented alerts that never reached receivers already turned to glass. Ground forces mobilized too late. Reinforcements arriving from neighboring systems found nothing left to reinforce. Dropships descending into the chaos were intercepted mid-entry, not by missiles, but by nanoclouds. Invisible to radar, these swarms shredded hulls atom by atom before dispersing into harmless vapor, leaving no trace of violence, just absence. Human boots never touched the surface. There were no infantry clashes, no urban firefights. Precision took precedence over presence. Every target had been mapped, confirmed, and eliminated without a single verbal command. War was obsolete. Only consequence remained. The Council demanded explanations. None arrived. Human communication stayed dead. Alien analysts speculated, theorized, denied. But the evidence was immutable. Veltrax's seat in the Empire's high command was empty. Its military ranked as non-operational. Its planetary systems offline. Commerce stopped. Transit rerouted. Supply chains collapsed in hours. The Dominion, once a regional power, no longer functioned. In orbit, human warships revealed themselves only after the damage was irreversible. Not in formation, not in fleets, single units, silent and motionless, stationed above ruined outposts. Their presence was symbolic, not strategic. A final statement. Asterisk, we are still here. You are not. Asterisk. Captured broadcasts from Veltrax civilians showed confusion, not resistance. No scorched earth. No mass casualties. Only specific eliminations, commanders, torturers, officials responsible for the executions. No collateral. No mercy. Every strike landed where guilt resided. It wasn't warfare. It was judgment, delivered with mathematical precision. Across Dominion-controlled space, secondary targets followed. Refueling stations destabilized by structural sabotage. Trade ports shut down by AI-triggered lockdowns. Internal databases corrupted beyond recovery. Satellites reprogrammed to loop the footage of the executed human women, on every screen, every channel, every city square. Survivors reported hallucinations, caused not by weapons, but psychological intrusions. Human neuroalgorithms hijack local network implants, triggering guilt loops, fear amplification, emotional suppression. Veltrax elite fell into silence, incapable of leadership. Lower ranks abandoned posts. Civilian unrest erupted not from rebellion, but paralysis. Their infrastructure hadn't been destroyed, it had been hollowed from within. Human drones deployed only once, to prison colonies. Dominion camps were opened. Non-human captives released without condition. Human identification systems flagged individuals responsible for abuse. No trials. No questions. Their executions mirrored those of the human victims, quiet, direct, and broadcast across Dominion archives before deletion. No territory was claimed. No flag raised. Humans collected no resources, demanded no tribute. They left scorched corridors, blank archives, and disabled cities, but untouched homes, unarmed populations, and silent skies. Where conquest might have occurred, only emptiness remained. Veltrax's neighbors responded in fear. Border systems declared neutrality. Internal purges began, not against humans, but among their own officials suspected of provoking Earth. Alliances dissolved overnight. Empires whispered, not in strategy meetings, but in back channels filled with nervous questions. What did humanity just do? No official voice from Earth claimed responsibility. No leader stepped forward. But every action had a fingerprint. Every strike followed logic no other species used. And the message was unmistakable. This wasn't a war. This was a demonstration. The Dominion had believed themselves untouchable. Armed, allied, and arrogant. Now they were a husk, economically collapsed, militarily erased, politically irrelevant. Their name became a cautionary phrase whispered across starports and diplomatic chambers. Not because of their crimes, but because of what followed them. Humanity hadn't retaliated. They had calculated, acted, and disappeared, leaving only silence louder than any declaration. Across the galactic core, silence became the dominant language. Every species had watched the unraveling of the Veltrax Dominion with clinical detachment at first, expecting a typical escalation. What followed shattered that assumption. Veltrax hadn't been invaded, they had been erased. Not through brute force or mass destruction, but surgical obliteration of everything that enabled their power. Not a single human message claimed responsibility. No formal war had been declared. Yet everyone knew who was behind it. The absence of denial was confirmation. What frightened the other empires wasn't the precision or the speed. It was the restraint. Humanity had proven the ability to annihilate, yet had chosen specific targets, sparing populations and infrastructure unrelated to the executions. That decision implied total control, not emotion-driven retribution, but ethical reconfiguration enforced through raw capability. It wasn't rage. It was structure. Small states bordering Dominion territory began shifting policies overnight. Trade routes redirected through neutral corridors. Weapons manufacturing paused. Propaganda broadcasts ceased. Even long-standing rivals to Earth purged their records of anti-human rhetoric. No formal deals were made, but entire governments pivoted toward appeasement, not from diplomacy, but fear of ambiguity. No one knew what else Earth was capable of, or what line might trigger similar consequences. The Galactic Council, caught between political paralysis and growing public outrage, convened emergency summits. Human delegates were absent. Their seats remained untouched. A symbolic vacancy no one dared to fill. Proposals to sanction Earth were drafted, reviewed, and shelved before even reaching a vote. None of the council members wanted to provoke another silent response. The disappearance of Veltrax had set a precedent no empire could ignore. Earth would not tolerate inaction disguised as neutrality. Within empires that once mocked humanity's emotionalism, internal fractures formed. Civilian populations began questioning leadership. News feeds replayed the original footage of the executions alongside the collapse of the Veltrax regime. The juxtaposition exposed the cost of silence. Protests erupted, not against humans, but against their own governments for watching and doing nothing. Trust eroded. Censorship rose. Fear turned inward. Defections began quietly. Veltrax military remnants, seeking survival, offered intelligence to Earth in exchange for protection. Smaller species submitted encrypted communications pledging neutrality, or even quiet support. Former allies of the Dominion turned themselves in preemptively, listing crimes their governments had previously buried, hoping transparency would shield them from what they now recognized as inevitable judgment. Psychological operations expanded. Human cybernetic intelligence systems didn't need to attack, they amplified the fractures already forming. Leaked documents. Exposed war crimes. Financial records. Secret transmissions. Entire political classes across two empires collapsed under the pressure of truth weaponized. No missiles launched. No fleets deployed. Just targeted exposure applied with perfect timing. The message spread faster than any broadcast: align with justice, or be buried with those who defy it. The Veltrax collapse wasn't isolated. It became an inflection point. The galactic status quo, long held together by bureaucracy and intimidation, lost its anchor. Empires that once acted with impunity found themselves uncertain. Who would retaliate if they went too far? Who was watching? No one could confirm if Earth had agents in their networks. No one knew how many systems had been compromised. Every silence was suspect. Humanity had shown no interest in territory. No interest in resources. No request for reparations. Their silence remained absolute. That terrified more than anything. Because it meant they didn't act from gain, they acted from principle, enforced by capacity. That kind of power couldn't be negotiated with. It could only be respected, or avoided. Former dominions disbanded. Coalition pacts dissolved under the weight of suspicion. Long-standing alliances fractured as each faction feared being pulled down by association. New alliances formed, centered not around ideology, but survival. The unspoken rule was simple: never provoke Earth. Never cross the line they refused to define. Across thousands of systems, diplomatic behavior shifted. Not because of agreements or treaties, but because the universe had recalibrated around a singular example of what happened when humanity responded without emotion. Not with armies, but with consequence. And the most unsettling truth was this: no one knew if what they had seen was Earth's full strength, or just a fraction of what had been prepared. The final Veltrax official was located in deep exile, hidden beneath false identities and protected by a dozen layers of corrupt foreign syndicates. He never saw the extraction team. One moment he was surrounded by mercenaries and encryption firewalls, the next he stood alone inside a containment field on a sterile observation deck, facing nothing but silence. Earth didn't need confessions. Every act had already been logged, every command he gave during the executions time-stamped and archived. There was no interrogation, no appeal. Only one final message to deliver. He wasn't executed in secret. His trial was streamed across every known system, translated into every major language, and preserved on every Council archive node. Not to gloat, humans didn't celebrate punishment, but to ensure the galaxy remembered. Evidence was presented with surgical clarity. No theatrics. Just a cold sequence of decisions, consequences, and outcomes. The footage of the 12 human women was played one last time. Then came the counter footage, the deaths of those who ordered it, the dismantling of the Dominion, the silent aftermath. When judgment was delivered, there was no applause. Only stillness. He was sentenced, not just as a war criminal, but as a symbol of everything the Council failed to prevent. But Earth didn't stop there. Veltrax Prime, once the heart of their empire, had been spared orbital annihilation. That decision was now understood. The planet was methodically evacuated, not through chaos, but in forced order. Civilians were transported without resistance. Basic structures remained. Then, over the course of 72 hours, the world was sealed behind a quantum barrier network. Automated stations positioned in orbit began transmitting a single message in every galactic tongue. This world stands untouched, not as mercy, but as memory. No species was allowed to enter. No settlement would be permitted. Veltrax Prime became the first interstellar memorial enforced by isolation. Not a ruin, not a warning, an untouched relic of the moment when silence from others proved deadlier than violence. Every passing ship was forced to reroute. Every orbital station within 5 systems now carried required education on the events that led to its sealing. Humanity issued no demands. They held no press briefings. No diplomats were deployed. There was only a single transmission routed through official channels, brief and irreversible. It said nothing about vengeance. It outlined no threats. It spoke only of expectations. We are not conquerors. We do not expand by fear. We do not strike first. But if justice is denied, if innocence is sacrificed in the name of power, we will not ask permission to respond. We are not here to rewrite your laws. We are here to ensure the ones we follow are never broken again. Watch what happened. Learn. Choose wisely. There was no signature. No name attached. Just coordinates leading to the sealed world and the records attached to it. Galactic culture shifted in the aftermath. Criminal proceedings became transparent across multiple civilizations. Civilian protection protocols were revised and enforced with unprecedented clarity. Even species long indifferent to human morality began to adopt elements of their legal philosophy, not out of admiration, but self-preservation. Political alliances realigned, not by force, but by caution. Humans returned to silence. Not a single further operation was reported. Fleets stood down. War algorithms archived. Black site production halted. Civilian trade slowly resumed. Yet no one believed they had forgotten. The memory had fused with their identity. It wasn't anger that drove them, it was a code written in consequence. The Dominion was never rebuilt. No successor state emerged. Their species, scattered and stripped of influence, became a living memory of what happened when brutality went unchecked. No other empire sought to avenge them. No one dared. In time, the galaxy would speak of it not as a war, but a correction. A realignment of moral expectations imposed by a species that had no interest in ruling, only in preventing certain lines from ever being crossed again. And they had proven, without question, that when those lines were crossed, they didn't retaliate. They ended the conversation completely. Earth became quiet once more. But that quiet was no longer perceived as vulnerability. It was understood, system to system, as the loudest warning in the galaxy.